Welcome to Vicoding University, training humans to train themselves. Okay, today I want to talk about in one of the drills and practices for learning to Vicode, and that is out in the world training. Okay, now out in the world, there's when you're driving around, when you go into a restaurant, when you're at work, when you're at home, all sorts of places. There's written material. Okay, now we want you to start thinking of all written material first as a code. Now, we don't want you to not be able to verbally read. You can always do it. You'll always be able to do that. It's just we want you, when you do that, we want that to be something you choose to do, not something that just is what you do automatically. What we want your first automatic response to be is to see it as code and just directly look at it and understand it, as opposed to go through the slower verbal process. Okay, to do that, we need to start training you that when you see things out in the world, it is code. Okay, and again, we're going to start by just giving you simple directions. Now, each week we'll give you different directions on what to do, but for the full week, you can do that just to sort of initiate the idea that when you first look at written material, it's code. After that, who knows what you want to do with it. But first, get that process that you first look at it as code. So when you go into a restaurant, you look at the menu, think, oh, code, and now we're going to give you some things for you to do with it, so you sort of get that reaction started. So do a little of it. If you then need to go to the reading process to accomplish what you need to do, then do that, the verbal reading. But write and tell yourself, I'm choosing to do verbal reading now or something, so that you give yourself a trigger so when you know you're doing one or the other. But again, and you'll be doing this when driving, etc. So the first one we've already talked about is that you're going to be doing the alphabetization or pre-sorting for alphabetization. Does the code belong to the beginning, the end, or the middle of the alphabet? And we talked about, we silently do this. We just look at the code and we silently decide. So you'll be starting out with the first one. Just look at the code and you decide is that the beginning, middle, or end of the alphabet. And you'll just know. You don't have to say anything. You don't want to say anything. It's silent. It's a silent thinking process. Then you look at maybe another code and you go, oh, I know where that one belongs. And then you look at another one and you go, oh, I know where that one belongs. So you're looking at it as a code and just knowing what part of the alphabet you would put at the beginning, middle, or end. Now you've initiated the process of thinking of this as simply codes. And as you did that, you probably also noticed that you knew what they did. And you didn't have to say it to yourself. See, that's the key. Now, it's probably a pretty quiet little voice that you hear, and you don't get that full sense of you really knew what it was. And that's one of the things we're going to be working on. You got to get that stronger, because remember, it's an unpracticed direct connection, while the verbal process is, so to speak, loud and clear. Okay, but we're going to be working on this direct connection, and the first thing we have to do is get you with the trigger that all written material is code, and you're going to think of it as code. Now, one of the challenges is that remember, we talked about kids, when they play, they practice being adults. Then when they actually go out in the world, sometimes mom says, okay, I want you to be little adults here now, and stand quietly, or introduce yourself, or do whatever. And for a time, they can be little adults because they know, they sort of practiced it a little bit. And so you're going to practice this and be able to do it for a while. So you don't want to be doing this for too long to start until you get good at it. Okay, and as you get good at it, then of course we're going to go on to probably more and more challenging ways of putting together the code. So we're going to keep you, shall we say, you challenged. Okay, but as you start each one, you'll do one, then another. But again, initially when you do it, don't try to force yourself to do too much, too long, or etc. Okay, so, and again, one of the things we caution you about is when you're driving, you've got to be really careful, because you're doing something new, and consciously it takes a lot from you. So if you're going through street lights or busy traffic, don't do this. Okay, if you're on a straight run and it's pretty open traffic, yeah, you can probably do this because that's pretty easy driving. But again, be careful when you're driving. We don't want any accidents going through this. So monitor yourself, okay? But it does take conscious effort. It does take away from your consciousness. Okay, so everybody got the idea. So out in the world training, again, we're going to be giving you this to do after the flip books each time, telling you what you should be out there doing. Now, to do this, you need to sort of get yourself ready in the morning. Okay, I'm going to be doing this during the day, sort of see it happening. You know, sort of like if a person says, you know, yeah, I really want to do that, and then they say, well, what time are you going to do it? You know, and then they say, okay, can you tell me, if you draw a map to it or whatever, I don't know. You get some more things worked out in your mind. There's a higher chance that you will do it. So having this out in the world training is important, okay, and it needs to be initiated by something more than just a good intention, because if it's just a good intention, it's not going to happen. So in the morning or the night before, you've got to sort of figure out, okay, when am I going to do it? How am I going to do this? Where should I, not do it, etc. Okay, so out in the world training, set it up for yourself so it works. But again, our main goal is to get you so that your first reaction to all codes is that all codes as you see them as codes. All written material as you see it as code. Okay. By Coding University, training humans to train themselves. Out in the world training today. All right. Thank you very much. I'll see you later.